Hello, everybody. This is Ranks FC live on deadline day, and not a hint of yellow to be found anywhere. My name
It's like a
is Jack
funeral, look, all in
Collins.
black.
I know, all in black, all in black. Can be your host. I'm joined by our transfer guru, Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
I'm tired, but I'm good. Yeah, I'm good, mate. It's been a very, very good, busy, mad day, but I'm
Indeed. Good. Right. Well, we're going to be hearing from you very shortly, but also the rank on Mr. Sam Ty is here. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, long day, isn't it, this one? And I'm not even really doing any work, so I can't imagine how Dean feels. I'm doing great, by the way. Thanks for asking, and I hope
good.
you've all enjoyed deadline day. Those of you that have joined us, thank you very much. It's been a lot. There's been a lot happening.
Yeah, I mean it's been a mad day. Shouts out to everyone already in the chat. It's lively in there already. We hope we keep it lively through there. We're going to be answering some questions. We're going to be talking a little bit deeper dives into a few of these new signings. But Dean, I think the only way for you to start us off is to talk us through some of the bigger deals that are still live right now. So let's start with Manchester United and Marcel Sabitzer, shall we?
Yeah, everyone excuse Sam's cat, by the way, throughout this broadcast. This is the professional levels that we are dealing with here. You will not see this on Sky Sports. Anyway, yeah, Sabitzer. I mean, this was not on the cards this morning. It's fun though. Like as soon as that Eriksen announcement was made, it's obviously a horrible moment in Man United season, and for Eriksen, like gutted for him. But then you're like something just triggers in your brain, and you're like, "Oh, what does this mean?" So the first call straight away from me was to someone at Man United that I trust, and I'm like, "What's going on? Are they going to sign someone?" At that moment, the answer was like, "Look, there's nothing in the pipeline right now. This has just come about. I'm not going to say nothing's happening, but if it does, all I'll say to you is expect it to be a player that we've already got previous knowledge of, because they're not just going to dive into someone that they haven't tracked before." So with that in mind, I was like, okay, I'll go and see if Tielemans is available right now. So,
that makes sense.
I was like, sounds as good an idea as any. So put in a call. What's going on with Tielemans? Obviously, we know his contract's running down. We know United have had interest before in the last window. Was told there'd been no contact. And furthermore, I said, well, look, at the moment, Chelsea and Arsenal are managing to deal quite nicely, and Jorginho's going for £12 million. His contract's winding down. Surely Tielemans would be same ballpark. And I was told, nah, Leicester aren't going to deal like that. They're not going to do a nice friendly deal at this moment in time to help Man United. He'll be expensive. They will pump up the price. There'll be a premium to pay at a late moment like this, especially for Man United after what's happened in the past. So I was like, okay, fair enough. That seems unlikely. Stuck out a tweet on it. Started getting back to thinking of who it could be, and then the Sabitzer news kind of dropped, and that was honestly about an hour after the first call had gone in about what to do about Eriksen. So I've obviously gone back to the guy, and when he got back to me, he was like, "Yes, take it seriously. They have looked at him before. There is something in this. Come back to me later, but don't ignore it." So then I got another text. That was from another decent contact. He was like, "This Sabitzer story definitely has legs. Let's try." There was another journalist. He said, "Let me know if you get anything, but this is something worth pursuing." So yeah, again, got a bit more detail about how they had looked at him in the summer. The data was all there. They knew what sort of player they were getting. So made one more check. A guy in Germany that I check in with time to time. Again, he said there's something in it too. So at that point, I'm like, yeah, this is legit. Let's tweet, and then we'll see where it goes from there. The best thing about this for Man United, I think, is that it's the loan that they wanted. They didn't want to get drawn into some long-winded affair here and get signing Sabitzer on a 4-year contract. That's not the situation, and that's not how Man United deal with things right now. Eriksen's going to be back end of this season, and in the summer, Man United want to sign a player that they definitely know is going to fit this vision long term. And hate to say it, but Frankie de Jong is still in that conversation when we get there. We're not going to talk about that right now, but
no, we're
when it comes to
absolutely not going to be talking about that. You're completely correct.
But that is the truth. Like when it comes to a permanent signing, that is what they would look at. But here we are, Sabitzer on loan, all happening, it's flowing over. United happy that the terms are going to be exactly what they were looking for. And if he does well, who knows? Who knows? Same as I say about Weghorst. Like if he turns out to be a good fit, could become a permanent signing. But what do you guys think? I mean, you've obviously seen a bit of this player, probably more than I have. Do you think he shoots like a horse? What do we think?
What a clip that is. Unbelievable. You know what? I think there's been a couple of really good bits of sideways thinking on deadline day, and Jorginho is one, which we'll come to. And this is the other, Sabitzer. This, United do not have a lot of time to react here. They don't have a lot of time to get anything in place. So to come up with Sabitzer is pretty damn impressive, in my opinion. It was obviously not going to be the perfect fit, not going to be the perfect player. Look, it's January 31st. Like, it's just not going to happen. So you do what you can. You make the best of it. And Sabitzer coming in for Eriksen makes sense to me. He's got a lot of very good qualities. He's a very well-rounded midfielder, a lot like Eriksen. Probably someone you would usually picture a little bit higher up in the formation, but will obviously play a bit deeper for United, much like Eriksen. There's actually quite a lot of similarities here between the two players. And yes, it's another kind of like bridge to a point where you want to be, but this is a situation where you have no choice but to basically go for that.
I think also, you add to that the fact that you are bringing in a player who has had that top level experience already, who is captain of his national team. And I think some of the things that Eriksen has brought to United this season have been intangibles. And whilst that's a massive cliche, like, obviously you have to look at the kind of all-round capacity of someone on the pitch to step up and be a leader in these scenarios, because there's a lot of young players here for United, and they are going to need guiding in the right direction. And especially when you've got players coming in and out of this squad, I think it's perfectly reasonable to then look at and go, right, Sabitzer is Austria captain. He's well regarded in the Bayern dressing room. From everyone that we've ever spoken to, seems to be very enamored by Marcel Sabitzer. People like him, and all of those things adding to it, I think are just bits that United will look at and go, yeah, you know what, they can step in here and make a difference in the second half of the season when things are on the right kind of trajectory. But then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into Sabitzer and those comparisons with Eriksen on the pitch in a bit. But before we get back to that, I think we might have to go to Enzo Fernandez to Chelsea, because this is the one that people have been rattling on about all day.
Yeah, rightly so. Look, this has been a difficult one to have a firm grasp on. It sounds like utter carnage trying to get this deal done. Obviously, lots of different angles to it. The main one being the installments and the structuring of this payment. I'll be honest, like, that is not a strength of mine. Like, maths, anything to do with structuring payments, anything to do with me paying off credit cards, none of that adds up well for me. So I have to, like, very, very careful how I get around these things. But there's obviously other ways to get around the story. And so why I didn't necessarily have the inside track on the structuring, I was able to find out, how it was moving forward. What are the officials actually doing right now? Like, are they sat around? And there was times it was like a waiting room at one point. I was told it's like that there's like a lot of agitation at one point. Like, what are we waiting for here? Like, we're meeting all your terms. Why isn't the owner green lighting this? The main message I kept getting back is that there was almost no chance that Chelsea were going to accept defeat. And they were like, they have gone out there to bring back a footballer, the man that they want. They are going out there to make a record-breaking transfer. And to come back defeated wasn't really an option. Isn't really an option. I mean, this deal still isn't like an ounce or anything yet, so it isn't an option. And I guess we've kind of seen that play out. Like, as I say, I don't know the full details of the chaos that has actually ensued in these talks. I saw Fabrizio had said earlier on, like, he'll tell the story one day about everything that's actually gone on here. And I'm sure in the days that follow this, there'll be 3 or 4 versions of the events that have been carried out. And I look forward to finding out all of those details. But Chelsea had taken over so many people to set this up. And, not just to tie up the business end of the deal, but to do the medical side of things and, plan the strategic announcement to get this done, to get him back here, all of these things. There's a lot of people involved, and also to prepare the deal so that they could announce it by deadline, even beyond deadline if they had to. Like, they knew that there was a potential this would go to the wire. I'll be honest, it might even go beyond the wire. Like, it has been mentioned today that this deal worst case will be set up so they get him in the summer. Like, I hope that happens because Fulham are playing Chelsea on Friday. I don't really want him to play, but I don't think that's really the intention here. Obviously, they want him right now. But hour by hour, they've been chipping away at this deal. Will it be done? It looks like it. It looks like they're going to get it done, but because it's been such a madness,
it's screaming deal sheet to me. It's screaming deal sheet. There's going to be people on my television at 11 p.m. waving pieces of paper around and pens and going, "This is a deal sheet."
Yeah.
What this means is, and I'm pretty sure that's where we're headed, but he's had a medical in Portugal, hasn't he? Basically, they've sort of sorted that bit out already on that. He's had a medical before he's actually been like green lighted, which means that Chelsea are getting everything they possibly can in place here to just allow, Rui Costa to turn around at 10:59 and go, "All right, then, let's do it." Yeah, they've just got to be ready. They've got to be ready. They must have a feeling that this can be done. It's going to be like pulling several teeth. Benfica are going to make it as awful as possible, but if they just hang in there and get all of their ducks in a row, this can happen. So, yeah, let's see what happens over the next couple of hours. I mean, I really want to see it done. I don't want this hanging over me, over everyone's head, heading into the summer. But Dean, what you mentioned there about, okay, if they can't get it done for this window, they'll at least get it all ratified and sorted for the summer.
Yeah.
While disappointing for Chelsea fans, it would essentially achieve the number one goal here of just Bagsying Enzo Fernandez, because the reason they're even bothering with this in the first place is because they might not finish in the Champions League. And if they don't get this sorted, he might go somewhere else. He might slip away. But if they can get that nailed, like Nkunku, regardless, then while it will be disappointing short term, they'll still have achieved what they set out to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, as we started this show, like Jorginho's transfer to Arsenal has been announced, like it's formally announced now.
Yeah.
And it's like, surely you're not letting Jorginho leave. Like, you've already got no players to play in this area of the pitch. If Enzo Fernandez doesn't arrive tonight, that is another option gone. I know Jorginho wasn't like part of the long-term future, but he's a great footballer and he's one that plays that specific position you have nobody else for right now. And he's gone now. He's definitely gone to Arsenal. That's weird. That's weird if they don't get this deal done tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move into some other clubs very briefly, Dean. We've got a fair few questions, but I know you want to talk about Everton, Southampton and Brighton in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Do get your questions in. I'll answer what I can. So, let me know if there's anything particular. But Everton, I mean, I didn't think that they would be worse by the end of the month than they were at the start, but that is actually where we're at. I mean, this is a proper test of coaching credentials, because that's all they've got to hang their hat on here. Yes, they probably do have a better manager now, a better coach than they had earlier on in the month. Like, I'd probably give Dyche the edge over Lampard with this team. But they've lost Anthony Gordon and they've signed nobody. Nobody. And
that's unfair. They have recalled Ellis Sims from his loan at Sunderland. I would you got me sure that one's included, mate.
True.
Okay.
He gets a good 6 minutes off the bench, doesn't he?
Yeah. But still, I mean, part of the problem here, I was told, is that, like, obviously there's that money from Anthony Gordon. Everton are massively in debt, right? So basically they kind of need that to pay off other stuff. They've gone for Conor Gallagher, a player they were never going to get. If they were ever going to get Conor Gallagher, they should have got him when Frank Lampard and his Chelsea backroom team were there. They've actually worked with the player before. That was the moment to get Conor Gallagher, not the moment Lampard leaves. That's not the moment to get Conor Gallagher, especially as the player knows all of the people that have just left there and can very quickly and easily check whether it's a good move for him, and will be told, no, don't do that. And now that, for what I was speaking to someone a couple of hours ago, I was like, why have they not signed anyone here? Everton need a goal scorer. They need something to happen. And I was told that basically, because they are so strapped for cash, they don't really have the money to offer wages that are tempting to players that are good enough to get them out of this position, which is obviously like a massive issue. You're not going to get players wanting to go into a relegation battle if they're not even getting paid well. So Yeah, that's a mess. I mean, Everton, they seem in big trouble now. And as I say, the biggest test of Sean Dyche. I see the first thing he's done is made sure that players pull up their socks and wear shin pads in training. Good start, but they're going to need a bit more than that when it comes to staying in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think it's a perfectly reasonable way to start. Be like, right, get your ducks in order very quickly.
Literally, pull your socks up, lads. This is not good enough.
This is how it's going to be. Right, Southampton, Dean, they've been all over the place in this striker hunt today, but it looks like they finally have got one over the line at the very least.
Have they though? I mean, I haven't managed to check this while we've been on air. I'm just waiting for the latest one to fall down. So I actually want to check.
They are also in the middle of a game, which is really not ideal if you're trying to get late business done. Like for Newcastle, it feels like Newcastle are kind of just like, right, that's it, we're done. Thanks very much. And so they're able to just get their heads in. The backroom staff must be there being like, I'm watching the game, but I'm also on the phone at half time. You know, trying to ring up and be like, have we got that fella in yet? Because we could really do with him. Be like, are you not coaching the team, Nathan?
It is a bit weird. So, Dean, just to give you a little bit more faith in this, there is a quote from Paul Onuachu who says, "This is an emotional moment. I couldn't pass it up. As a child, I dreamed of playing in the Premier League."
So he's definitely coming to Southampton then.
He's definitely coming to England.
Okay, that's good. So if you go to Everton or Southampton, that's a positive, because that's further than Southampton have got with any of the other targets that have basically been deals are struck and then not followed through. It's been a maddening time for any Southampton fan. It's not like this team don't have the capability to get out this mess. I mean, me and Sam were saying just before we went on air, this team does create chances. There is potential to get out of it. They just need someone to finish them. Like Che Adams, I mean, he's their top goal scorer, but the amount of opportunities that he's managed to miss this season is not really normal. And normally he'd have eaten them up too. If this was last season, he'd have scored them. He's just not in the right moment. So somebody else can eat up these chances. Anyway, Southampton need to announce a striker. They absolutely need to announce a striker so they can get out of this mess. It's been chaos. But the other one, Brighton, big winners. They're keeping Caicedo. I mean, talk about set your stall out and stick to it. I didn't think they would manage to do it. I really didn't. But they have. I mean, they've played it perfectly from the moment when it looked like he might go on strike and they gave him the weekend off. From every single thing that's come their way. It even got to the point at the end where Arsenal were readying their third and final bid, and they were just kind of like, it's a waste of time. We're not going to pay £80 million for him, so we're not going to get it done. And even by that point today, I was told they're like, even if at this point, like midday today, if they come forward today with an £80 million bid, it's no longer enough. It's no good now. It's not happening. And apparently the player's actually been fine with it. I spoke to someone that said the situation was explained to him. They took it well. He'll get his head down, and he knows that another opportunity will come his way. And when it comes to the summer, it might be a different story in terms of selling him.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ciso's been playing in the youngsters, obviously, which they brought another centre midfielder in now as well. So there is, a succession plan in place. It might just have been too early for that one to go through. I did see a question here from Jeremy that said, would you rather have Caicedo for 85 or Enzo for 120? I thought it was an interesting one, Sam.
Can I go neither?
Yeah, you can go neither.
Or Jorginho for 12. Jorginho for 12.
Jorginho for 12. That's me sources. I mean, look, I'd rather take Enzo for 120, I guess. Someone tweeted the other day that, Caicedo has more caps for his nation than he does Premier League appearances. About 27 to 25 or something like that, 30 to 28. Like, you forget just how new to the scene Caicedo is. And how he was stashed for a year with Brighton before he really started to break through, even though he was already playing for his nation at the time. Yeah. It's all very new. I know it's the case for Enzo as well, but he's played with Benfica to a very high level. Champions League, I've watched him against PSG and Juventus, and then I've just watched him win the World Cup. Like, I obviously feel a bit more comfortable with that. But the answer is neither, a resounding neither. Like, I don't like either of these deals or either of these amounts of money for these players, which has been my common theme this window. As you guys know, I'm a bit of a Grinch for this sort of stuff, but I don't think it's responsible spending. So I think Arsenal have been saved from themselves by Brighton, and Chelsea will see.
It's an interesting one because I actually think it's one of those questions where both of these kind of fees, you're talking about the players having to maximize their potential, right? So there is the potential that Enzo Fernandez is a 120 million euro player. There is the potential that Caicedo is an 85 million pound player. Fine. Those two things are both acceptable, but they're kind of best case scenarios, right? That's the kind of maximum you're ever going to pay for a player, even if they're excellent. You're thinking, okay, but you've got to absolutely hit the heights and hit every inch of that potential for you to be worth this. And therefore, I think it's risky, right? And that's why we always talk about this. You look at the deals, the biggest deals that have been done throughout the years. That's why very few of them look like successes, because even if that player does all right, or they play to 70% of their capacity or potential, it's seen as a failure because those big like trigger moments haven't been hit. And I think that's a really important point to make on this one. Dean, we're going to answer a few questions in a second, but before that, you just wanted to talk. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the fact that Arsenal look like they might push one out the door here. Is this deal for Sambi Lokonga to Crystal Palace a possibility? Because it's been mooted around the place now.
It has been mooted, yeah. Do you know what? I checked in with one of my contacts that knows Palace very well, and because I was wondering that exact question just before coming on, and so I said to him, "What's going on at Palace, mate? Should I expect anything?" Literally expecting just like, "Yeah, Lokonga," and he was like, "Yeah, so Elanga." I was like, "Sorry, what? Elanga? Elanga?" And he's like, "Yeah, they're asking the question of Elanga. They're not sure if Man United are going to let him out or not, but have asked." And I was like, "Oh, I like that. That's a proper deadline day signing, isn't it? Zaha's injured, so you sign Elanga." But Lokonga was definitely on the cards earlier on today. As I say, I don't know. He didn't mention it, and I got a bit carried away with him talking about Elanga, and then I went down on a different avenue, and I went to try and find out whether Man United are actually going to let Elanga out. Doesn't seem like they really want to at this stage. But yeah, Lokonga, I mean, look, from an Arsenal point of view, like what an upgrade. Like Lokonga clearly not good enough right now to help with Arsenal given their position. Like probably didn't expect to be trying to help a team win a Premier League title. But now won't be because they've upgraded him and they need him to play football. So, turning to a former Arsenal player, an Arsenal legend to help guide him doesn't seem like the worst idea, to be honest. And I think that's probably why this one has got some legs.
Okay. All right. Well, let's come on to Jorginho. You mentioned it very briefly, Dean, about the fact that that's now a done deal. So we're going to come on to this. There was a good question here a second ago, which I thought was probably worth from @randomer123451. Great name.
What a great name.
Are Arsenal done for the window? Sorry if answered already. Obviously, Jorginho feels like the big deal. Is this done in terms of incomings at the very least?
Oh yeah. This will be it. Obviously, they were on the lookout for a right back as well. That this didn't happen with Fresneda, so this is as far as they're going now. They got big business to do in the summer, and the level of that is obviously going to depend on what they now manage to do. I think it's been a good window. I mean, it hasn't been extravagant, has it? But I kind of get a feel here of kind of what Newcastle have done, where they've made good signings that aren't like mind-blowing, but every one improves the team slightly. Like Trossard didn't blow me away at all, but I guess it's decent. The defender, Kivior, I don't know enough about him, but I'm guessing he's good enough to add another layer. Yeah, there you go. And then Jorginho, obviously just proven. So like, I think they're three really good deals. What are you going to say about Jorginho? How do you want to analyze him? What do you think we're getting from him?
Well, Sam, I was going to throw it to you here because I think we're all in relative agreement that the idea that Jorginho is actually a very good signing here for Arsenal on a short-term deal, relatively low fee, and people will point out that his contract was up in 6 months, I'm sure. And they'll go, well, it's 12 million that you wouldn't have had to pay in 6 months. But in terms of getting in someone who likes a ball dominant system, who is very good at recycling possession, and with Arsenal's midfield kind of one issue away from a whole collapse, this feels like the kind of sensible move that is the kind of thing that steers you over a transfer or a title winning line.
Yeah, I mean, for a start, 12 million is still cheap because Trossard had 6 months left on his deal and he was 21 or rising to 27 million or something. So he was like double. So it still feels cheap to me, even if you could have got him for free in 6 months' time. But they might the need for Jorginho might have been proven obsolete in 6 months' time. What they needed right now was just that midfield body. But what they needed to do was acquire that midfield body in I think a very financially sensible way. One that doesn't threaten, a long-term expense in terms of handing out a 4-year deal, and one that doesn't threaten what is a very settled midfield dynamic. So you need a player who's good enough to play for Arsenal, who doesn't expect to step in and play for Arsenal. I mean, that is difficult. And with 1 day to go, that is ridiculously difficult. And, Caicedo would have brought all sorts of questions. You spend 60 or 70 million pounds on Moises Caicedo and you say, okay, we'll call your name if we need you, but we're actually pretty happy with our midfield. That doesn't make any sense, does it? It just doesn't make any sense. So Jorginho on a 1.5-year deal with an option for a further year for 12 million, I think it's really clever stuff. Genuinely, really clever. I think he slots into the system if he's needed. He might not be that delighted about the fact that he probably starts on Europa League duty, but I think you'll probably be able to sate his appetite there and keep him happy by saying, well, you'll probably play 6, 7, 8 Premier League games and you might just get another winner's medal. It might work out okay. Another winner's medal? They haven't won it. He hasn't won it, has he?
Well, he might be on the cusp of winning it. So we'll see.
Yeah, not yet, but we'll see. So, I mean, it's enough of an argument. But I think it's just, financially very sensible. I think it's the plug and play option that they probably needed. It's the cover and the body they needed. I just think it ticks all the boxes. I think they've done really well here. I don't know if this was I know for a fact this wasn't the plan. It kind of feels like they've got a bit, I don't want to say fortunate either, because obviously they've come up with a deal at the end, but it's kind of worked out for them.
Their lap in a touch.
Yeah, it's kind of worked out for them against the odds when maybe the chips were stacked against them. And there'd been some criticism. I'm sure you saw it bubbling against Edu. He'd spent the last day of the last transfer window bidding for Douglas Luiz and failing to get him. So they wanted a midfielder in August. And then they negotiated the first half of the season, somewhat fortunately with basically no injuries. And then they find themselves on deadline day in January bidding and bidding and bidding for another midfielder. And, that deserves a bit of criticism. Why are you not more organised? But they've pulled it out of the bag. Well done to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's dig into some numbers because we can. And Jorginho and Thomas Partey, we've done a few little comparative charts here, Sam. So maybe it'd be easier to just quickly explain what we're seeing and walk us through it.
Well, I mean, these comparative radars from 23 are really good for simply trying to show people stylistically what a player does. And, we can use different statistics to paint similarities or differences. And the truth is, Thomas Partey and Jorginho are quite similar in a few different ways. Yes, they have their differences, clearly. But in terms of a player that can sit at the base of midfield, recycle, play under pressure, and dictate traffic, yeah, these two can do it. And I think the radar basically shows you that in terms of passing volume and accuracy. They're very similar. In terms of forward passes, they're surprisingly similar. Obviously, Jorginho gets battered as a sideways pass merchant. That might not be necessarily true. They're quite similar in long passes too. They're not really a factor in terms of creativity. And Thomas is a bit more active in defence, but maybe less secure on the ball because you've got a bit more in the interception column, but a bit more in the ball losses in his own half. So Jorginho really is the ultimate safety midfielder. And ultimately, Thomas's job is to give it to the more technically talented players on his team. He's got Saka and he's got Martin Odegaard and he's got, Zinchenko drifting in field, excuse the cat again. And it's his job to just basically recycle and move it around. And Jorginho isn't going to be quite as good as Thomas Partey, but if they need to call on him, they'll have about 75% of his qualities there and ready to go. And that's great.
I would just touch on one thing in that Arsenal will have designs, I think, because the second string, if you will, looks so strong now. We've just seen that side mostly go to City, a lot of rotations, and give a really good account of themselves. They'll have designs on going deep in the Europa League this season, I think, because they'll feel that they have the capacity to do so. And Jorginho has been always an excellent player in Europe because maybe because the pace of it is slowed down a little bit, maybe because his defensive onus is removed a little bit. But I also think that that's probably worth just touching on in the way that the side now, you put in Jorginho there into a young-ish midfield, or you have young players around him, and you let him steer or point and direct as he so often does in those games. That's an incredible wealth of experience to be able to call on. We'll move it in to the next slide, which just shows us their kind of average positions and their passing maps as well. Sam.
Yeah, it's like a passing network, and I just put it together because, you know, you compare the two again, you're looking for some similar qualities. They're basically both playing as the nexus point in their respective teams' formations. You know, Thomas on the left there needs to be able to push the ball specifically to 4 different players more often than not, but kind of across the park. He's right dead in the centre, and he has to have good links to Xhaka and Zinchenko on the left, and then Ødegaard and Ben White on the right. That's his role. Pick it up off the centre-backs, don't lose it, push it to one of these 4 players, and then they'll combine with the guys further up. And then Jorginho, kind of similar, you know, that's kind of what we're seeing there. He's combining with those 2 defenders and that central midfielder and 1 player on the left. They're really not that dissimilar in terms of roles. So, while there will be some natural differences between the 2 players, they're not identical by any stretch. Again, talking about a last dash pickup here. We're talking about an emergency need filled, and Jorginho, I think, is great for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's come back and let's go away from the moments for a minute. We're going to talk about Pedro Porro to Tottenham Hotspur in just a second. But before that, I just saw this, Dean, and I thought you would have some insight in it from Scott. He said, not sure if it's true yet, see anything, but is Harry Souttar 100% happening?
Yeah, I'm never going to say 100% because it's not announced yet. But yeah, I mean, I was told like 2 days ago that this deal was actually done. It was all set up. There was no problem with the player, the terms around it. All it was taking was that Leicester needed to get some players out of the door to make space for him and make sure they could balance out the squad and the figures. So earlier on today, he was booked in to carry out all the medical and stuff like that. And so as far as I'm aware, like this is done. Again, it's like the Porro one. Like you're like, well, why hasn't it been announced? Don't really know. Obviously, you can't check out every transfer simultaneously, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't think that Leicester have any reason to worry about that one. But yeah, good signing, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was one of those where it looked like Yannick Vestergaard was heading to Hertha Berlin, and then he decided that he didn't fancy it. The great limpet of Leicester City, as I actually now refer to him, he just doesn't want to go anywhere. No. But it looks like that one will.
Well, they've got rid of a couple now, haven't they? They have to get rid of Perez and.
Well, we actually had a question about Ayoze Perez, so
we didn't. Was it by your burner?
It wasn't by my burner. It was by Leicester Matt.
Of course it was.
He said, thoughts on Ayoze Perez to Betis. I'm happy to be rid of him. It feels like he could do a very good job in La Liga.
Happy to be rid of him, but he can go and do a good job in that other silly league.
I kind of get what he's getting at, though. It didn't feel like there was a place for Ayoze in this Leicester side. But equally, I'm pretty excited about what he can bring. And I think that Betis' wingers for so long have had to provide such a goal threat. You know, it is a very much a front three who score, and then occasionally Nabil Fekir just comes up with a piece of magic. But actually a kind of goal-scoring wide man who can slot in for Juanmi, who's just coming back from an injury, and actually make a difference in those areas, I think works for Betis. So I'm pretty happy with it as a signing. I think it's good depth, good cover. And yeah, I can completely still understand why Matt wants rid of him at Leicester City. So it's going to be very, very interesting, that one. Let's go on to
Sorry, just
Pedro
before
Porro.
I saw there's a question from Usef about Isco, and I think Isco might have been offered to Man United before he completed his deal. I think that like a lot of players have been offered to Man United in like the last, well, how many hours it's been today, and I think Isco might have been one of them.
Has he ended up anywhere? I saw the Union Berlin stuff died out.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I saw a Juventus link earlier, which was really quite something. I was like, oh no, no, please don't do that.
We said the other day his stock's got so low, I don't even want him at Fulham. It's just sad. It is so sad. No more disco for us.
Dino, Guess who heard you and decided to respond with actions, not words? Che Adams on the score sheet.
Is he really? What's the score?
2-1 to
Newcastle with
Newcastle.
2-1 up.
2-1 to Newcastle. Wasn't a blinder. We should be doing a watch along.
Yeah, never mind that. Right, let's go to Pedro Porro. We are going to talk about Bayern and Cancelo for all of the questions coming in on that one. But let's talk a little bit about Pedro Porro. Then it feels like this has been close for about 5 hours, and yet we've heard nothing out of the Spurs camp.
Yeah, I was told to expect this announcement at like 6 o'clock. So I don't really know what we're waiting for here.
Spurs have just done a tweet to let us know that Harvey White has joined Derby County on loan for the rest of the season, and the people in the responses are very deeply unhappy. I'll give that to you for free.
Yeah, funny that. I honestly think that they're just having a laugh at this stage. I think they're just dragging people along, and they'll announce it just before the deadline. Maybe they just can't be bothered to deal with anything else and just keep people dragging along. But an announcement's going to happen. The deal's done. I actually think that it probably suits Daniel Levy. The structure of it is probably better now. The way that it's actually worked out, and the fact that they can hold back the payment until the summer is probably a good thing. Interesting that Matt Doherty's ended up going to Atletico Madrid. I mean, this is just the place you end up, basically. If you've played for Tottenham, you all get a chance at
if
right
you play
back.
right wing back for Tottenham, you basically need to be bombed out of the team, join Atletico Madrid, and then 3 years later, all the Spurs fans will go, "Oh man, he'd been our best right wing back."
It's basically that. And Jed Spence obviously going to Rennes. He had loads of options and just decided to go there because one, it was that he felt like the team suited him, and secondly, it looks like he's going to have a good run in that team, and he'll get a lot of game time. Like that was the main thing that they were looking for from the loan. So that's good. But yeah, Porro, this has to work. Conte sees it as a very important position. This is what intrigues me the most. If they hadn't have got this deal done, can you imagine Conte in the next press conference? Like, that's why this was just worth, even if they had to go up another 5-10 million, I'd probably done it just to make sure that he hasn't got any more excuses, because this is what I'm waiting for now. If Tottenham don't take off, and actually they've got quite a good run of games, I think, coming up. I think that over the next 5 or 6 weeks, if this doesn't go well now, Conte hasn't really got that many excuses. I mean, I'm sure he could turn around and say, well, we still didn't do this or we didn't do that. But ultimately, they've given him a player that he really wanted in a position that he felt really needed upgrading. So let's see if he's good enough. I mean, Jack, what do you reckon? Is he?
Well, is he good enough? This is the big question. And it's also why we can bring in some statistics. I think he's good enough. I like him a lot. And actually, after the Cancelo deal was kind of made public yesterday, I wondered if there might be a late twist in this with Man City going back in to bring him back to the Etihad. But yeah, I think he's good enough. I like him. I think he brings a real attacking flair. He's a very different player to Emerson Royal. And I think maybe that's what we're about to see from these graphics, Sam.
Yeah, thank God he's a very different player to Emerson Royal. I mean, he's been driving Spurs fans up the wall, hasn't he, Emerson?
Well, he's great against Fulham.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's great when he has to defend. He's good when he has to defend, but you know, the wing back role in a Tottenham team that are this good, it's about 65-70% weighted towards the attack, and Emerson just doesn't have it in him. He doesn't have the technical ability, he doesn't have the crossing ability, he doesn't have the confidence. Pedro Porro does, is basically all he does. His game is much more suited to playing wing back or full back for a top side, because his skills are weighted very heavily towards receiving the ball in tight spaces and, you know, combining and moving out of them, crossing the ball into the box, pushing that little pass in. It's not like a cross. It's like he's on the last line of the defense. He receives a switch pass and he slots the ball into the space towards the byline. He does that so much for Sporting, and we see so many of the strikers, Paulinho especially, running onto that and then hitting the byline. And Kulusevski's going to love him. Like, he's going to feel like he's got an actual teammate to play alongside on the right-hand side. I think this has the potential to be a real game changer for Tottenham, just like the offensive quality and confidence that Porro can bring. Jack, you can show us the Emerson equivalent of this pass map, right?
I can indeed.
Yeah, it's horrific. It's so, look at all the backwards passes. So they're receiving the ball like these are fine. These are all of the players' final third passes, and where Porro slings it in, and you saw a lot of chances created and assists. Emerson's are all going the wrong way, and they're going out over the box, through the box, and out the other side. Like, this is a really bad map for an attacking fullback or wingback. It's not what you want to see. What Porro showed us was a lot of volume and a lot of quality. And this was the easiest way for Tottenham to get a lot better in this window, in my opinion. And it has taken them a full 31 days. But they've done it somehow.
They've just about got over the line. Well, we think they're just about to get over the line.
It's
still not official, but
they'll be
all
fine.
right, you'll be fine. Well, that's good news. I imagine it's music to the ears of many Spurs fans. But yeah, I mean, there is one more in here, Sam, that we can look at, and it's just the passing networks, and it just goes one more on what you're exactly saying. You know, in that, look at the direction of travel that Pedro Porro is not only picking up and receiving passes in, but also the way that they're going. It's important.
Yeah, just look at the position he's receiving the ball in. Just compare them, basically. One is behind the halfway line and one is a fair whack further forward. Pedro Porro is playing on the last line. You know, this is a sporting system that quite often resembles like a 3-4-3. It can switch around a bit, but it's very often a back three with wing backs, and it allows the wing backs to push all the way up onto the last line. So they've got a presence of 5 in a horizontal line, which is ultimately what Conte wants at Tottenham. And he's not far off it, except for that right wing back that won't run forward. His name's Emerson Royal. So basically, he's purchasing what I think is essentially the left diagram. That's what Conte wants, and that's what Conte is about to get. It's okay to have a bit of balance between the wing backs, sure, but he needs much more from an attacking sense. He needs many more off the ball runs. He wants his fullback and his wing back to receive the ball high up, get his head up, and then slam it into the box, or play the pass forward, not amble forward, be reluctant to receive, and then pass it backwards. Like, I can't explain how much of a game changer this is.
Yeah. If Spurs were going to get one in, this felt like the one that they needed through the door, I think, more than anything else. And that's crucially important to the way that he wants to play. There was a question, though, just here from Siddharth, who says, why are they signing wingbacks when Conte is destined to leave? It's a relatively reasonable question, I think. Obviously, they're trying to keep Conte happy right now, but it doesn't feel like that is going to be a happy marriage for much longer, despite the fact that they brought in a player who seems tailor-made for him. Does this mean that Spurs now look, Sam, to their next manager and think, right, the tools are here for a 5 at the back. We need to actually continue playing with wingbacks?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're not sure about your manager long term, and he's asking for expensive players, it's still okay to buy them. Just make sure that these players aren't so specific that they could only really play for the one manager. Like, just make sure they're very good quality and they can play in a number of different systems. And I think Porro has shown us over the years that, yes, he's a wing back, but he can play fullback. That's fine. He can play in different systems. He's very talented, very technically gifted footballer. Like, he's well good enough to play for most top teams. That's why he's costing 40 or 50 million euros. So, you know, there's 2 ways of going about it. You've got like the Jesse Marsch, Maxi Verber style signing, which, like, you know, long term is just a huge question mark, because if you don't believe in Marsch, why have you given him Maxi Verber, like the perfect Marsch player? That seems a bit odd to me. But I wouldn't be worried about giving Conte Porro, because anybody can use Porro.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about Bournemouth, shall we? Let's talk about Bournemouth. There's been a lot of Bournemouth chat in the comments. It's not been something we were necessarily dead on doing, but there's been some really interesting transfers. And Sam, you'll be delighted to know that Zabarnyi has just come through the door at Bournemouth, a player we were talking about a little while back. He's their 5th signing of this window. So Zabarnyi joins Semenyo, Matthias Viña, who's come in on loan from Roma, Ouattara, who's come in for 20 million from Lorient, and Darren Randolph, who probably isn't going to play all that much, but that's okay. But it's an interesting one, because actually you look at this, and that's a very good transfer window for Bournemouth.
It's not a competition as to see who can sign the most players.
No, because otherwise Nottingham Forest would win.
Well, Bournemouth have tried this before, haven't they?
Look, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with a couple of their players, basically, to give it a good old fist pump and a well done. Like, I like Ouattara, Vigne's fine. I think I like Troy Ori. I've only seen him a couple of times. Sabani's fine. I have some concerns about his passiveness. You know, bit right-footed Pau Torres. So maybe in the Premier League context, a little bit concerned. But I really don't know Semenyo. Like, I haven't seen Bristol City in years. So, like, it's hard for me to sit there and go, like, Bournemouth have absolutely nailed it. Like, I appreciate the ambition and their heart's in the right place because they're trying to buy Nico Zaniolo. And it looks like if they hadn't spent all that money on Hamad Traore, they actually might have got him today. So, that's a bit of a shame. But they've given themselves a fighting chance, haven't they? Like, fair enough. You go into January, you're under strength, you're under skilled. Go and sign 5 players, see what you can do. I can't fault the ambition. But I'm really not sure if this keeps them up, genuinely.
No, I think I agree, but I don't necessarily know if that makes it a bad window. I just think that that's due to the respective quality of the sides around them as much as anything else. And so you look at that. I like Semenyo, and I think it's a sensible signing in that if Bournemouth were to go down, Semenyo feels like the kind of player that could fire them back up.
It reeks of that, though, doesn't it? It reeks of that. That's the problem.
Okay. It's okay to double. It's okay to double guess yourself. It's okay to
10 million
like
for us. Yeah, I guess at 10 million.
Yeah.
I guess it's fine. Yeah, I guess that's fine. Yeah,
it's like when Huddersfield signed Karlan Grant in January. It's like so obvious you're planning for the Championship.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, Sean is worried about you.
Track. Yeah,
could you just check? He said haven't seen Sam's cat for a while. Is he having a medical at Chelsea?
Todd,
with that takes me on. There's obviously we've reached that stage of the window where people start tracking flights, and there's been a flight that's due to fly from Lisbon to it's initially Farnborough, which is where Chelsea players usually fly into. And then there was news that it was instead going to be flying to Luton. So people have been tracking that. And now the flight apparently has been pushed back to take off at 9:27 p.m. So that's the vibe around the Chelsea fans at the moment. They've got to the stage where they are tracking planes. They are... Yeah, it always happens. It's always a signing where you're tracking planes. Was Man United fans earlier in the day, and they actually had a plane to track, and it's brought in their player. Not sure about this one. They might miss the plane, I reckon, because it seems like there's still a bit to do. But it's all gone a little bit quiet recently, actually. The last hour or so has been a bit quiet. I'm wondering if they might be signing some papers. What I'm going to do, though, in a minute, I'm going to have to get off because I've got to put some check calls in and do a bit Forgive Me Sport. But I'm going to come back in a bit and I'll make sure that during that time I do throw out a couple of texts on Enzo Fernandez. Anything else? What else do we need? Porro. We don't know why Porro hasn't been announced. If Enzo Fernandez is getting on the 9:27 flight to Luton.
I hope not. He'll get straight back on a plane and go home.
That feels late, man. That feels really late.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to be there, does he? Because he's done a medical in Lisbon.
No one should be flying into Luton this time of night. It's going to take, if he has to get that National Express coach, it's going to take him till like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, Enzo, you're not going to believe it, buddy. It's a rail replacement service.
We shall.
But yeah, lads, I will go and check on all this now, and then I'll be back in like half hour, 20 minutes, something like that. Probably 20 minutes or so.
Okay, mate, you do that. In the meantime, Sam and I are going to discuss some other players and some other numbers, some who we've already talked about.
Sam, keep control of Jack. Don't let him start talking too much about Betis and stuff. Yeah?
I won't. No, I won't. Also, we've organised for a guest to temporarily replace you, Dean. Who is it? You'll
you have to wait and see, mate.
What will I see?
No, it will be a secret.
Oh, okay.
But I've just invited him to drop in whenever. So
this does remind me a little bit of that time when we were at Bleacher Report, and while I was at work that day, somebody came in and did a screen test for my job. Do you remember that?
I remember that. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, good.
I was like, Lee, what is going on here? Like, this guy's trying to do my job in there. Like, I'm just doing a favour for someone. Okay.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, right. We'll
Right.
leave it on that
Right.
note. I'll speak to
See
you
you in a
later.
bit.
I'll see you in a
Bye.
bit. Good luck, Dean Jones. Right. Let's go onwards. And Sam, I think just before we come on, because I want to talk about Sabitzer, and obviously whatever we're doing, we'll pause once our special guest joins us. But there was one more bit that's already up that I thought we may as well chuck back in here. We had some questions about Harry Souttar. Let's bring up a little radar for Harry Souttar, shall we? A little chat on him, because this is one of the funniest radars I've ever seen.
It is funny, yeah. It is funny. And look, when you see those two dots there near the center circle, which mean very bad, it's our obligation to basically check if that is a data error. And it's not. It's not a data error at all. Harry Souttar is absolutely gigantic and brilliant at all of the things that we've listed on this radar, except for passes completed and passing accuracy. And that, to be fair, is not all his fault. This is a stylistic thing for the team. He plays for Stoke, true to form. I checked in with Ali Maxwell from Not the Top 20 podcast, best championship and EFL podcast out there for those of you that are so inclined. I said, is this right? And I looked on who scored, I looked at Opta's data, and his passing accuracy is down in the mid 64, 65, which is extremely low for a centre-back. Extremely low. But it doesn't really tell the whole story. Like, yeah, Stoke are a bit direct. Souttar absolutely loves raking the balls, from one side of the pitch to the other. We saw it at the World Cup, and he's been doing it at championship level as well. And what Ali told me was this. He said, everybody in the championship knows that Harry Souttar is absolutely epic at raking these like 60-yard bombs from one side of the pitch to the other. So whereas quite often in the championship, like centre-backs aren't necessarily pressed that cohesively or hurried on the ball, Harry Souttar is. Like, everybody tries to get in his face because they know what he's capable of. He's kind of been marked out. And if you look at some more advanced statistics, he's played by far the most pressured long balls in the division, i.e. he's trying to play a long ball and someone is in his face and trying to tackle him at the same time. So that kind of explains the accuracy issue. Other than that, it's just A stars, isn't it, really? I mean, it's very active. He's dominant in duels. He's like 6'6". That's not a surprise. Wins all his headers. Again, because he's played so many passes, the distance of the long passes completed statistic, it is pretty high regardless. I mean, look, he's stepping into a team who have been atrocious at defending set pieces for a year and a half, something like that. This has got to help, right? Just buy the biggest man you can find. That's got to help.
Well, yeah, 100%. We saw that from him at the World Cup, didn't we? That he was an incredibly useful player at set pieces and aerially won everything. It was part of the kind of Australia fairy tale in so many ways. The fact that Harry Souttar seemed to nod away absolutely anything that was chucked at him. So I think it's an interesting one, and it's one that should make Leicester a better side in that regard. Shall we talk a little bit about Marcel Sabitzer, Sam? Because we've had a look and there's been a lot of kind of questions about whether he can actually step up and replace Christian Eriksen for the rest of this season. So we've had to take his radar for posterity and accuracy from his last season at RB Leipzig, which was 2021-22, because basically he hasn't played much since. And I think it's quite an interesting one when you look at this to go, how is this going to play out in terms of him replacing Christian Eriksen? What's new here that we look at, and what can he do that Eriksen can't, and vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, Sabitzer he's a very good player. He's not an elite player. He's just that one step down, I think, basically, unfortunately. There are a couple of games I've seen him in this season, which were against Barcelona, and they were in the Champions League, and Bayern Munich had a real trouble with Barcelona's intensity in midfield. It got very fast in there and very intense very, very quickly. And it was so bad in there that even Kimmich was really struggling to keep his foot on the ball, because Pedri and Gavi, I mean, when they start pouncing on you, it is tough, really tough to live. So Sabitzer, it felt like he, of all the players in the middle, really struggled with the tempo of the game, and he just got caught on the ball a little bit. It wasn't quite physical enough. It wasn't quite quick enough, that 10th of a second off. that's really the only knock I have on him, that he isn't an elite footballer. And those kind of games really show that he's just one notch down, because being just one notch down is still not bad at all. Really, really handy footballer. Used to play higher up the pitch, used to score a lot more screamers, used to kind of play as one of the attacking two in a 4-2-2-2, has kind of steadily dropped backwards over the years. Has become a bit of more of a complete footballer in that regard. You've got to remember that, like, he's a Bundesliga midfielder and there's going to be some adaptation over to the Premier League. Doesn't always go so well. But I've had Sabitzer marked for a long time as someone who could come to the Premier League and probably do just about anything he wanted to. He got linked to Tottenham for a while, I think, under Mourinho, and I was really into that idea. So I'm still into it. And, you know, Sabitzer aside, just looking at the actual deal itself, like, well done to United for acting really, really fast here and grabbing a player. I mean, given that Bayern have shown so little trust in Ryan Gravenberch, I am a little bit surprised that they've decided to say, oh, yeah, go on, then we'll just give you Sabitzer. And, you know, Gravenberch can be the number 3 there, because, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like they really trust him at all. But they're taking a bit of a leap here.
Well, maybe this is where we start to see him play. This is probably interesting enough in terms of where it is. And I think that what you see here is that Christian Eriksen has played a very defined role for Manchester United. Maybe it's not the role that we would necessarily expect him to play. But when you actually look at the passing networks for the, you know, this Manchester United side and then the Bayern Munich side on the right, this is from last year. It is one of those kind of spaces where you go, right, okay, he's picking up the ball and getting the ball, get rid of the ball in similar areas. And that has to be something in terms of, we've talked about plug and play players before on here today. You have to kind of expect that Sabitzer can dive in here and become part of this team very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think his early task is really simple, because, you know, what Eriksen has done is stabilize the base of United's midfield and just give you that ball retention and that ability to escape under pressure. Just make sure that you can progress the ball from back to front relatively smoothly. Sabitzer just needs to step in and do that. So I'm sure everybody's going to be on his tail immediately to make him prove that he can do it, and he has that escapability factor to him. But I think he probably does. Although, to be fair, just thinking about it, remember how long it took Erik ten Hag to put Casemiro in the team? Like a full 6 weeks. I mean, we can't rule it out, can we? It might still be Fred Suzanne for a little while longer, but yeah, he's got the characteristics, I think, to step in and supply what Eriksen was supplying on what was already an emergency basis, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. These are the heat maps, which are the last of these graphs for this, but I think it kind of shows that you're getting a player who has a little bit more all action in his game, who's willing to drive a little bit around before he kind of gets to the exact spots that Eriksen's in.
It's just Bundesliga, isn't it? That's a Bundesliga heat map. That's a Premier League heat map. That's the difference.
That's where we are. That's where they are. And on that note, I think it's a great time to bring in our special guest. I'd like to give a massive ranks welcome to Alex, better known as Euro Expert. Alex, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
No, absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. It's been a mad transfer deadline there, Alex, across Europe. So, I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting one. We've talked a lot here about the big moves that have mostly involved the Premier League. We've talked about Marcel Sabitzer. We've talked about Enzo Fernandez. Talked about Jorginho and Pedro Porro. But I think there's been some moves today that have maybe flown under the radar a little bit. So I think there's the ones that we want to quiz you on. So I'm going to hand over to Sam, and he's going to direct this one.
Well, my brain's a bit fuzzy now because it's been such a long day, and I can't even remember if it was today or yesterday. But Tete signing for Leicester City, I know, was one that you were very interested in. And, I haven't seen a lot of Tete since he moved to Lyon. I saw a little bit of him at Shakhtar Donetsk in the Champions League, but since then haven't been in touch with him too much. So you seem to like it. Why do you like that deal?
For Leicester specifically, I cannot see a negative. We should provide the context, right? The Leicester fans, what they've been quite irritated about this season is that their best player, James Maddison's, had to drift out to the right-hand side. And that frustration has also come from the summer when Brendan Rodgers wanted to sign Ademola Lookman, but the budget couldn't really suffice for it. So they've had a big hole on the right that they're pushing Maddison over to fill. Now, Tete is coming in as a pure natural right winger. So even if he doesn't, contribute 10 goals and assists, in his time at Leicester, he'll be letting Maddison play more centrally. But I'm quite bold on the move because I think he will be contributing more than 10 goals and assists each season. And he'll be creative as well. Tete, if you're unaware, he's, as you said, Sam, is a winger who was playing at Shakhtar. You might have seen him score against Real Madrid. And he was playing at Lyon after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He went there under FIFA's controversial ruling where players who were involved in clubs in Russia and Shakhtar could move essentially for free to European clubs. He was like the big landmark move that started the lawsuit from Shakhtar to FIFA. But he's been quietly getting on. He scored in his Ligue 1 debut for Lyon, who are hapless, by the way. They've been in terrible form, but he's been a consistent performer. The thing I like about him the most, I'd say, is that when you tend to think of wingers like I think of an Antony, right? When I think of Antony scoring or assisting or doing anything of danger, is when the ball's at his feet. Tete's someone who's really good at sort of ghosting into the back post. You don't need to feed him the ball every 5 seconds. I think he's actually seconded from bottom in Lyon's squad for touches per 90. But a few of his goals this season, I remember a couple of weeks ago against Stade Brest, he just ghosted in completely behind the whole defence, behind the fullback, and tapped in on his right foot. He's quite two-footed, I'd say, as well. So yeah, Tete to Leicester, I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's a perfect move for them and he'll be creating a lot of havoc on that right-hand side.
Yeah, nice. I like it. Let's go winger to winger because I know that you also quite like the look of the Sulemana deal, or maybe you just quite like the look of Kamaldeen Sulemana. Maybe it didn't matter where he went.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
Yes,
Yeah.
You could have meant that in many ways and I would have agreed.
So what do you like about him?
Yeah, Sulemana, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a full honesty, ladies and gentlemen watching. When I saw the move announced earlier, I was actually a little pessimistic because I've been watching Rennes quite closely. Anyone has engaged already, I'm a big Ligue 1 fan. Been watching Rennes fairly closely, especially since Sulemana joined. And he's sort of flattered to deceive in a way. Like, I expected a little bit more considering the hype that came in with him. I think he's got about 4 or 6 goals and assists. And I thought, okay, just basing off that, lazy analysis, it's not been amazing for Rennes. He's definitely not started every game. It's kind of rare to see him, in my opinion, in a Rennes shirt if you're just catching the league going on BT Sport. But that's when I kind of went through my own notes and I went through some stats sites, and I've now come to the conclusion that I think Southampton are getting ahead of the game here on this move. I mean, for one, he's one of the top players in the league, and I think top 20 for dribbles completed per 90. He's averaging 3.2. which provide a lot of directness off the left-hand side where he operates. He's also really young. He's going to turn 21 in a few days, I think. And while he's been quite an inconsistent finisher, if you look at his expected goals, which for everyone watching, I mean, you've been putting the radars up. So I assume your audience is very smart. But just in case they're unaware, non-penalty expected goals is the measure of the quality of chance a player gets himself into. Sulemana has been, I think, in the top 20% on the stat site for Bref for non-penalty expected goals per 90. Essentially, the conclusion is that for a winger, he's actually getting into a lot of good goal-scoring positions. He's just not taking those chances. That's the situation Mohamed Salah found himself in that early part of his career. So I think if Leicester can, if Southampton, can coach him correctly, really start to work on his final product, then they've got a very well-rounded winger who will probably get a lot of money for in a few years.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying the talent, just the raw talent that you see, like when he bursts about the pitch on the ball, the step overs, the stop and start. Like it's pretty special to watch him. Unfortunately, you're right. I haven't really been able to watch that much of him over the last year. Just like Rennes haven't massively given him a go. And even though they sustained a pretty big injury recently as well, they still decided to sell him, which felt a little bit weird.
It's one of those, isn't it? Sometimes you look at a player who comes in and you think, wow, they've developed him and sold him on for a profit. The Brighton model, if you will. Rennes haven't done that. They've just bought a talented player and sold him on for profit anyway. That's just like a really very different shift. I mean, you talked about the radars, Alex. We can actually pull one up here for Kamaldeen Sulemana. And Sam, it's not the most technical term in the world, but we have referred to him in the past as a dribbly boy. And that very much is exactly how this radar looks.
Yeah, I mean, look, the context of the move is everything. And I would go as far as to say, as much as I love Sulemana, he's not really what Southampton actually need. And when this move was announced and it was set to go ahead, they hadn't actually got any kind of deal over the line for Paul Onuachu yet. So everybody was still losing their minds over the fact that they've got this like army of incredible wingers and 1v1 dribblers, but no central striking point to really finish off all the chances. Well, we can put those fears aside now and contextualize it a little bit further. We're probably looking at a situation here where Southampton are now fielding Kamaldeen Sulemana and Mislav Orsic behind Paul Onuachu, and then probably James Ward-Prowse as the number 10. And all of a sudden, it all starts to feel a little bit more dangerous. And now that they have that central striker secured as well, Sulemana is not stepping into a scenario where he has to provide everything. The chances fall to him. He's got to take them because, as Alex has rightly pointed out, that hasn't tended to work out that well for Rennes so far. And you're right, Jack, that he may not have got any better in his time at France. He may quite literally be only like 3 or 4% better as a footballer since he joined Rennes, which doesn't suggest great development track. He's had a couple of injuries. He's fallen out the side. For some reason, the manager hasn't bothered with him. But raw potential-wise, this is incredibly exciting. And when you get to watch him dribble and move with the ball, it's something else. It really is. There aren't that many players that can move like him.
Yeah, he's just heaps of fun, and obviously those are the things that people love watching, Alex. And I think those are these are the things that maybe Saints have lacked a little bit of. Yeah, they've been here and there and everywhere in many ways, but it's just been lacking something, a little bit of spark to try and get them out of it. Sulemana, if lacking in other areas, and I think you're completely right with what you're saying about just those snatch chances, etc., etc. He brings spark, no doubt about that.
Yeah. I think he would definitely bring a spark. That's something he's always done when he's on the pitch at Rennes. He always likes to go take a player on 1v1. And maybe part of the reason why he didn't start games was because he can be quite powerful as an impact sub. Yeah. And it's quite a nice role. I think for Rennes as well, their coach Bruno Genesio, he's tended to deploy a 4-4-2. But in practice, that's kind of shifted more into a 4-3-3. And what tends to happen is their right-hand sided midfielder is usually either Lovro Mayer, who's the Croatian talent who queues round of him, or Benjamin Bourigeaud. They tend to push into the front two, which is like usually Terrier and Giri, to make it a 4-3-3, which means the left side where Sulemana would prefer to play is often filled by someone like Flavien Tate, who's more of a central midfielder. So just by system, I think, this might be why he's not got in. But yeah, I'm interested to see what he does to Southampton. And to be completely honest, I don't know if we're going to talk about Onuachu, but Southampton really, they are my team to watch for the rest of the season. I was talking to their fans quite early on in January because Nathan Jones, it just looked like he'd gone on holiday in the winter break, right? That's what their fans are saying. I'd seen some incredibly passionate rants about how the club was being run into the ground. And now, they've gone out and signed Sulemana, they've gone out and signed Orsic, and, they've still got players like Dujs Letasar at the club. And Gavin Bazunu, goals meant to be very talented. And Onuachu, I think he's the make or break because I've been watching him for a couple of years. And I tell you what, Euro expert might be my name, but I have not got a clue how this one's going to fare in the Premier League. This could really be like anything from 10 to 15 goals on the back end of the season, or he's a complete fish out of water.
Well, yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Sam, I know you wanted to talk about Onuachu, and so been doing some digging today. So I'm gonna throw you two up into a 2-view and let you two duke it out on him.
Yeah, I mean, look, I haven't watched much of him, but Alex, you may not know, but I work for Southampton. I just do some writing for their matchday program and their website and stuff. So just mostly opposition stuff, but need to keep track of it. Haven't seen much of him. I'll go and have a look at some of his goals and go and Y-scouting this afternoon. I'm kind of with you because like half the time he takes the ball, he drops in and takes the ball, and the amount of backheel flicks this guy does to release a midfield runner, it looks great. But then that's like 50% of the equation. And the other 50% is like that ball could go anywhere, like literally anywhere. And Southampton fans have got this thing. They're always pining for, they don't make him like Graziano Pella anymore. They don't make him like Graziano, who was just like perfect. Like every time the ball went up to him, it just stuck. Chest, thigh, foot, whatever, it stuck. It set a standard for target men that it's possible Onuachu doesn't meet. They've had some stinkers in between Pella and this guy. They're a bit nervous about it, but ultimately they're going to put all that aside right now because they just needed a guy to come in. However, yeah, this is a big man who sometimes sorts his feet out, sometimes doesn't. I feel like it's all about how he starts here. I think it's a huge amount of momentum that's going to decide how this 6 months goes.
I think as well, like to really back you up here, because I agree with everything you're saying. You often hear with I remember when Scamacca signed for West Ham, right? And the common line to throw out, and it's a very accurate one, even though it's very cliched, is, he's got good feet for a big man. You always hear that. You cannot apply that to Paul Onuachu at all. He's not got good feet for a big man. He's got feet for a big man. That's it. But there's not to take away from his goal scoring, right? He's got 14 goals in 16 games this season. And he has been very prolific in Belgium over the last couple of years. I've been quite lucky enough to see him in person actually play. I got to see him play against West Ham in the 21-22 Europa League. And I remember being very excited when Genk came to play because he was in good form. But their manager, I think, was about to lose his job. So you have to taper what I'm about to say with the idea. They weren't on top form, right? But he barely touched the ball throughout the game. When he did, it felt like he lost it. He did not look very comfortable against the West Ham defence. And this season as well, what worries me a little bit is I do think he's quite a powerful finisher, even though he hasn't got very good footwork. Like whenever he strikes a ball, he strikes it very, very hard, which is encouraging. But I think this season he's got 6 headed goals, and then most of the rest are right-footed. And last season there was a huge over-reliance on his right foot. And it feels like if you're not going to be able to, contribute as much as someone like a Graziano Pella, and you're not going to be as useful in link-up play, if you're going to be a penalty box, someone who just operates exclusively in the penalty box, I feel like he wants to be a little more well-rounded than, very reliant on your right and your head.
I also think that looking at the headed goals that he scored over the course of the season, a lot of these are like looping balls into the box that he's able to sort of track and get under and then just beat everybody over the top because he doesn't even have to jump early because he's absolutely humongous. Ward-Prowse's deliveries tend to be very low and whipped, which actually don't really work for the style of header that he's been scoring. And, Ward-Prowse's corners can be pretty vicious, but they can be so vicious that no one can get anywhere near them. And there might have to be a little bit of compromise there. So there's a lot that needs to go right here, but at the very least, it's just going to kind of energize the fan base a little bit and just energize the team, I think, to have a bit of a focal point, because although Che Adams has scored this evening, despite the fact that earlier on the stream, Dean was talking about how he misses all the time, like they need help. And they've whittled through a list of probably about 40, 50 names. They've reached this point. This is where they are. It's got to stick, I guess. It's just got to stick. Jack, come back in. There you are.
I'm back. I wasn't dropped out. I just went to do some socials for us. It's hard. It's hard producing, hosting, and doing all the things at once. We're
write the theme tune, sing the theme tune.
In so many ways. I actually was going back in because I was going to change direction. Because Alex, I know we have a load of Crystal Palace fans in the chat, and they were on call earlier, being like, "Is anything happening? Is anyone coming in? Please." Hamada's signed, so that is a done deal. What can you offer Louis and the rest of our Palace contingent about him?
Well, I can offer a leaf because I've just finished editing a video on Ahmada, and it would have been an absolute bummer if that move had fallen through. I would have got about 4 views instead of the expected one. So I can offer a leaf. But on a serious note, I think this is a player who I'm interested to see play out as well, a bit like at Southampton, but for different reasons. I do think he's a very talented player. If you're unaware of him, I'll go into him in a second. But one of the big problems at Palace we should outline is that Vieira takes a lot of time to trust new signings. Odsonne Edouard, Palace fans have told me quite a lot that he's not seemed to be trusted. Chris Richards, they're signing him in the summer from Bayern Munich. He's only recently broke into the starting 11. Palace fans are saying, why has he not been playing at all? As well as Will Hughes, that's he's the poster boy of this issue. I think he's in the bottom 5 or 6 players in the squad for league minutes this season. And again, Palace fans can't seem to figure out why. So this is my main concern with Ahmada. Now, let's talk about him for a second. So anyone who's unaware, he's a French 21-year-old. He moved to Juventus at a very young age. spent a year there in their academy, and then went to Stuttgart, first on loan and then on a permanent move. That was between 2020 and 2022. And his best asset is ball carrying, and I'll probably say his worst asset is defending. He's quite a raw player, could be quite rugged in his defending. I think he got sent off after 13 minutes earlier this season. It's what a lot of Bundesliga fans have affirmed he definitely needs to work on. But in terms of escaping tight situations, he's absolutely brilliant. Very, very agile midfielder. I was looking at some highlights earlier today against RB Leipzig, where he was just able to win fouls really easily because, he'll receive the ball and then definitely turn the other way. And before the defenders realise they've put a foot in, and he's won a free kick. I also think his passing is pretty good, but this is a sort of thing where I was watching it mainly in youth games when he didn't have much pressure on him, and he was able to strike some really clean sort of switches. For Stuttgart, it's kind of the opposite because they're quite a high pressing team. They're quite direct, not necessarily got the time. You're not afforded the time either by the opposition in the Bundesliga or by your team's play style to, slow down, get your head up and play a long raking pass across the pitch. So that's something that I think we might see a bit more of in the Premier League. I hope we do. But it all kind of tapers down to, will Vieira think he's ready to start straight away? Because as much as his dribbles and his carries, we might even bring someone up as is such a strength, he only completes 42% of his dribbles, which for a midfielder is pretty low. And I don't think Vieira will stand for that unless you're like an Eze and you're allowed to keep going at defenses and keep trying to burst into the final third.
I think this is really early for as a move for him. This is how I would probably put it. I think he's a good player. Like, I caught up on him this morning as well when I saw it all flashing through. Had a bit of a peak game really for himself recently where he got a couple of assists and a red card. And it was just a bit like, yeah, I mean, that is kind of you, isn't it? Some brilliance, some silly stuff. The red card was a second yellow as well because he got involved with the crowd celebrating a goal. It was like really silly. But he's playing football at Stuttgart. Like every week he's playing. And he looks like a player, as you say, that's quite raw and needs a bit of work and needs a bit of finessing. And now he's going to go and not play because not only is he basically not good enough to improve Crystal Palace, but Vieira will take him a little bit of time to get to know him, probably the rest of the season. I just wondered if they needed to do this, basically, or if they should have left him there on loan or come back in the summer. It feels like, I'm not doubting the potential. He's a good young player. I just wondered why they'd done it. Genuinely, like, did you need to do this?
I think that's a very fair point, to be honest. I think, and it's interesting as well to know the background of Palace this window, right? If people watching aren't particularly clued up with what's happening there, The Athletic have done a few good reports on it, where essentially their owner, John Textor, he's been caught up buying Lyon. He's been trying to buy them for about 5 months, and it only went through in January. And he's also built up a lot more shares than he had in Crystal Palace. Now, people will know Crystal Palace's owner is Steve Parish, he's not actually the majority owner, but he tends to do the day-to-day running. And he's the face of sort of the cautious Palace of, we've been burned before with transfers, let's not rush into making a decision. Whereas John Textor, throughout this window, has been getting increasingly frustrated, and there's been increasing leaks of him saying, can we just sign a player that I want to take Palace forward? We need to stop being so cautious. And I think this has kind of been the result. Like, is it someone who's going to improve him now? I'm going to take the more optimistic view and think, listen, Crystal Palace are not going to get relegated this season, touch wood. I think there's a lot of other teams that are worse than them, and they may not finish as strongly as last season. If Ahmad doesn't, improve them right now, if they can keep him there and coach him well, then you can see in like a year's time or 2 years' time that move really paying off. But I think it just comes to how much patience Palace fans have, Ahmada has, and also Patrick Vieira has, not only with him, but with the board, if they're still going to be stingy with transfers.
Yeah, no, I think it's spot on. It's a really, really interesting one. And look, we've seen players come in and kind of move away again in these kind of situations without ever really kind of breaking through, or breaking through is probably the wrong word with Ahmada, but a player who doesn't get those opportunities in the Premier League and then goes off and does really well elsewhere, and everyone's like, oh, why didn't we play him then? That's one of those strange ones. And Palace feel like a club that could definitely do that. I want to flip one more to you, Alex, which is one going the other way to France. Jed Spence has joined Rennes on loan. He's gone to join his mate Joe Rodon in France on loan. But this is an interesting one, and it's a move I really like, because you're looking at the way this plays out. You're looking at Rennes' situation at the moment with the players that are injured. You're thinking this is an opportunity for Jed Spence to actually come in and get some serious minutes.
I'd even go further. I think it's a chance for him to become Rennes' new right back, because people may know their right back at the moment. Hamari Traore, he's been there for a while. His contract actually runs out in the summer, and it looks like he's going. So I think this is actually, if it goes well, I can see Jed Spence actually coming in and being, signing on a permanent move. I think we all like it though, right? Because it's always really fulfilling when we see, an English player take that risk and go abroad to a foreign country. But I think it will be quite interesting to see how he does in Ligue 1, because I haven't looked into him as much since the summer, and I don't tend to watch the Championship, but I made sure I did a little bit of research into him to try and get clued up. And I remember thinking that, coming away with the ideas that he's very good attacking, but still quite raw defensively. And Ligue 1, I mean, Kamaldeen Sulemana, we just discussed, is leaving and he's barely starting a game. And, he's one of the top dribblers, probably one of the top ranked dribblers in Europe, right? Ligue 1 is a very technical league with lots of young, quick, powerful players. Spence isn't going to have a good time, like an easy time here. It's going to be very tested. So I'll be keeping a very close eye on how that one works out.
Yeah, but I just think that, the way that Rennes throw players forward at times should suit him. And, I know that obviously they've kind of experimented a bit between formations this year, but it seems to have settled into that 5. I just think it'll work. I just have this underlying feeling that Jed Spence is going to be a success there. And as you say, that contract for Traore running out in the summer, the injury that he picked up, there's just this moment where I think you've got a really good opportunity, and whether he decides to stay on in Europe or come back to the Premier League, it's so important for him to get minutes, because I think that he'll be looking at that move from Nottingham Forest in the summer and thinking, maybe I made the wrong call there. I just like this, especially with the kind of Europa League campaign still in the works, for him to move into the right direction. So yeah, it's one that I'm a fan of.
Jack, do you know who we haven't discussed yet? Sorry, Alex. We haven't discussed at all, and it's perfect. We haven't discussed Joao Cancelo, really.
No.
Somehow we just haven't really got round to it yet. We've been on here for an hour and 23 minutes, and we still haven't really talked about Joao Cancelo, which feels a bit wrong. I think we should tick that box before we welcome Dean back.
Let's do it.
Can you believe Joao Cancelo has gone to Bayern? What?
It does.
Did you hear the Athletic were discussing it today on their podcast? It was really. It seems like I don't know. Have you guys heard it today? What's kind of gone down there?
It doesn't look like him and Guardiola are best friends anymore. Let's put it that way.
Well, they went into depth about the idea of. So apparently Cancelo, he just hates not playing games. And even like the sources that the Man City journalist Sam Lee was going to, he said even the source close to Cancelo who would defend him on every hill said, if Cancelo has 46 games and he plays 45, he will not be happy. And it seems apparently because in the World Cup for Portugal, he wasn't starting every game. It's just been bubbling and bubbling and bubbling. And then last Friday, it just kind of got put over an edge where he didn't get selected for that Arsenal game, which now makes a bit more sense. Like he doesn't like not playing, and then he gets left out of the squad, and then that's the reason it's gone to explode. But it just feels, like you said, man, it feels so sudden.
Yeah, it's very surreal, actually, just because you really do not expect to see. I'm going to say one of the world's best fullbacks, but let's be honest, one of the world's best footballers, full stop, just handed out on loan. Just go, nah, you can go. And they're not replacing him. Well, I mean, they are Rico Lewis, but they're not really going to do anything about that. And they've just handed him to Bayern Munich. They're like, yeah, cool, off you go. We don't see eye to eye anymore. It's very odd.
Well, we've had a shed load of questions on this. Jorge says, are there any truth to Cancelo having a fight with Pep and the team during training? I think this might have been overblown, which is nice. Yeah. My brother's just messaged me to say it's a good job he's not using that 7 shirt anymore. I did think this, the kind of fullback who's going to take 7 as a shirt number it is the kind of fullback who is probably going to have a bit of an ego about them and the way they want to play. But I did think that it's an interesting one. Yeah, and I think there has been a fallout, but I don't think it's that. I don't think City, there's a few questions on whether they're going to bring in a replacement. It doesn't feel like that's the case. But what I am interested in is how this works for Bayern, because Bayern have had a quietly very, very good window. I mean, obviously this Cancelo deal hasn't been quiet, but bringing in Jan Sommer for around 8 million. Yes, his contract was running down in the summer, but that feels like good short-term business. Daley Blind has joined, which I like, because it feels like Daley Blind is the kind of player who you want in these kind of teams, just to steer you through the occasional choppy waters. And now Cancelo, that's a lot. It feels like Bayern are a lot stronger, maybe Neuer aside, from where they were at the start of the window, without necessarily going nuts on spending money. People will talk about the option on this deal in terms of Cancelo and where it's set at. But actually, in this window, that doesn't matter. It's not an obligation. It's an option. If Joao Cancelo tears things apart, they'll think about that as good value. So I'm intrigued as to how you think he'll fit in at Bayern, Alex.
I think it's incredibly helpful for Bayern and Nagelsmann. I was doing some research into this the other day for a video. Bayern have their lowest points tally at this stage of the season than they've had since they started winning the Bundesliga every year in 2013. 37 points at the stage of the season, the lowest, I think it was 2014-15, or no, 2018-19, sorry, when they're on 39. Now they've drawn 3 games in a row, and after the second draw, apparently their sporting director went into the dressing room and she yelled at the team, was like, this isn't good enough. And the one weakness you can point in that team, or the main weakness, besides not having Robert Lewandowski at the football club anymore, is right back. I watched him against Frankfurt at the weekend. They had Stanisic, I believe, right back, and he wasn't bad for the first half. He was competent, but the second half, when Frankfurt were putting more pressure on Bayern, there was a few times he just passed the ball out of play, and he looked very shaky. Made a lot of safe decisions, and it's been an issue for Bayern, especially like last year. When they were fielding Pavard there, they're fielding Süle there. I think you couldn't really ask for a much better fullback. I know Cancelo's been playing left back for City, but he won't be playing over Davies. I think he's coming straight in as a right back, and that solves Bayern's biggest issue, and it will take huge pressure off Nagelsmann, I think.
I'm actually quite excited to see him play as a more kind of, I don't want to use the term orthodox, because this is Nagelsmann we're talking about, but like a more orthodox kind of right back role, because he's been this inverted left back for so long now that he's actually way better at left back than he is right back. But that's in Pep's system. So that kind of works for and against you on both positions. Now he's moving to a different league and he's moving to play for a different manager who, albeit is influenced by Pep, but may just use him as a bit more of like how he was at Juventus. And in that last season at Juventus, when he really started to catch on, just before basically City swapped him and Danilo, he was playing a pretty like rumbustious role. Like he was knocking the ball past people and sprinting, and crosses were coming from the byline from his right foot. Like he looked relatively traditional to a point. This was a long time ago, and he was really good then. He's become a much better footballer since. I'm kind of interested to see him go back to his roots here. It's been 4 years or so since we've seen Cancelo do any of that, and he was bloody good at that as well. Some people may need reminding, because he's just been so overwhelmingly good at all the other niche things from left back.
Yeah, I mean, we do have the ability to bring up some bits on how Cancelo fits very briefly before we go. And Sam, I thought this was interesting. You gave this to me. It's how Cancelo has changed from one season to another in the Premier League, or what's changed in his game, if you will.
Not that much, except for the final product, right? The bit at the end. It's like he's topping the charts in every metric for fullbacks. Always is. Anything in attack, final third influence, touches in the box, any progressive runs, most dribbles, crosses. Obviously, these are inverted crosses. He steps inside and whips them in the other way. But what's really been lacking this season has been, just like as fantasy football players would probably complain, those goals and assists, and obviously those clean sheets as well for Man City at times. And I don't really understand why this drop-off happened, because we should mention it. We haven't talked about it yet. He wasn't very good in the first half of the season by his own standards. I thought he was a real disappointment, and it wasn't just because the the last bit wasn't happening. Like it just wasn't happening. And I guess we should probably balance the argument and say that, well, yeah, Bayern are getting one of the best fullbacks and footballers in the world, but he's not been in a very good place for the last 3 months, and they might need to pick him up a little bit.
No, I think that's fair. I also think it's interesting, and you look at how Bayern set up, that, Fonzie Davies on the left is clearly the more advanced player. And I just wonder if Nagelsmann is looking here for someone to jump into these gaps. And you look where the kind of centre mids are, and it looks like a system where you're going to want your right back, not just to be able to go around the outside, but also to suck in, to invert here and actually link up with the players in front of him. And when you look and you add that to this, which is Benjamin Pavard's positioning and the passing map there, I think this makes loads of sense in terms of where Bayern are trying to go. And so when I look at those kind of things, it just adds up for me. And I think that when you're looking at it, you think that this is going to be a move that works out for everyone. With that, I think it's probably time that we let you go, Alex. It's going to be a busy evening. I imagine you have plenty of things to be working on. But thank you so much for coming on and joining us on Ranks FC today. Do you want to just tell everyone where they can find you on a daily basis?
Oh, absolutely. It's been a pleasure to be on, guys. Thank you very much. You can find me on Twitter and on TikTok, the channel @EuroExpert. I'll be doing lots of videos covering the European moves to the Premier League. I think I'm going to be focusing on Southampton and a team we haven't been able to mention, Bournemouth, who've been doing some incredible business that I'm really excited about. So check out those.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Alex. And we'll see you again very soon. Thanks for coming on Ranks today. It's been a real pleasure.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye. Right. That is one of our special guests. I've got another one. Alex there mentioned Steve Parish, who is famous of this parish because he asked the big question. He asked the question, who is Dean Jones? Well, let's ask him. Who is Dean Jones?
Huh?
Who is Dean Jones?
Dean Jones is a frustrated man right now. That took a long time. Sorry about that, lads.
No, we had a great
We
time.
had a great time with Alex. Yeah, we had a wonderful time. That was a lovely chat with Alex. Right, Dean, that means it's time for you to update us on what's going on in the world of transfers. What you got?
Well, I don't think Enzo's on the plane, but I do think, lads, this has moved forward since I've been gone. I think this is happening. I think Enzo Fernandez is going to happen tonight. Everyone's being very cagey about saying so, but definitely something happened in the last hour that has been positive, because the people that were really cagey earlier on in the night are giving much more positive signs now, and they think it's going to happen. So, yeah, I think Enzo Fernandez is going to be announced tonight. That's big. Pedro Porro is signed. He's fully signed for Tottenham. I presume they're just making some weird video about him and trying to figure out how they announce this guy after weeks of negotiation. You'd have thought they might have the video ready, given it was probably always going to happen, or whatever it was.
Probably been burned before, mate.
Yeah, but yeah, no one seems to know exactly why. But I can say that Porro is a done deal. Let me just go through some of the things I've just been talking about with Gimme Sport, just in case some of those things are interested. We talked about Houssem Aouar and how he was one of the players today offered to Man United. Can't remember if we talked about that or not. But
we talked about people linked, but we didn't mention him specifically, and I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah, so Aouar was one of those mentioned. They were already down the line with Sabitzer. Are they similar? I don't even know enough about him. He's more attacking, isn't he?
No, I wouldn't say they are similar players. No, that feels like a little bit of a number 10 kind of gap.
So I'm not sure they're even looking for that. So that seems a bit strange. But there you go. What else was there? We talked a bit about exits from Chelsea. Obviously, Gallagher and Ruben Loftus-Cheek were both expected to leave. I think that basically, like, that door was closed because of the Jorginho situation. Jorginho wasn't expected to actually leave today. And because that happened, I guess they've had to limit now how much they can rip apart the depth of their midfield, because at the time of speaking, Enzo Fernandez isn't even a Chelsea player yet. So to let another player go, absolute madness. Like, they can't do that. So I think that is the case. What else did we talk about? We talked a little bit about Crystal Palace. They signed somebody whose name I can't pronounce. What's his name from
Amada.
Stuttgart?
Yeah, that's done. Is
That's
there any
done.
movement on the others?
Yes, I think Lokonga is going to happen. They're still working on it. But it sounds like there is actually some positive noises around that one. So that could be a late one that is announced. But it does sound positive from the check I was able to make in that time. I think that was all. I think that was all the updates that I pretty much had.
I think these are going to be simple questions for you to answer, Dean, but we had some conversations in the chat while you're away. Basically asking if Liverpool had any intentions of doing absolutely anything towards the end of this window. All signs would point to no, wouldn't they?
Certainly at this stage, yeah, they got hour and a half.
Well, Liverpool move in silence. We know this.
Liverpool do move in silence. I mean, this would be absolutely incredible. This would be incredible silence because there's been nothing until now, and they would have leaked it by now. So no, Liverpool aren't going to do anything. Seems a gamble to me. I guess they're hoping that players are coming back to fitness and that they can get through the season. I mean, the expectations now, I guess, are so low that they're probably contemplating just attacking this properly for a rebuild in the summer and seeing how they move on from here. There's going to be some big questions for Liverpool in the summer, including Mo Salah, because I know that is a topic that's coming back onto the agenda. Renewing that contract has not gone the way that everybody expected. Let's see what Salah has in mind. But yeah, oh my goodness, can you imagine what the summer's going to be like? I was already thinking a second ago, there's that story, there's the Declan Rice, there's Vlahovic, there's Rafael Leao, there's Jude Bellingham, there's so much stuff coming up already from like tomorrow of all these players that we haven't even been talking about for the last month because they were off the table. But yeah, Liverpool at the moment, no, there's nothing going to happen there.
You forgot Osimhen as well, who was brought up in the comments by Andrew. So does the fact Lookman, who's a bit of a flop in England, show the Italian league is weaker? Therefore, Osimhen might not be the animal that we think he is, but he might be the potential target for a few clubs in the summer. I'm going to say no, Andrew. I think that Lookman had the potential to be quite good in the Premier League. That he was held back first by Scott Parker's Fulham, who didn't create any chances. Then he did okay at Leicester, although he was utilised sparingly. And now he's been given a run and a lease of life. He's like, oh, by the way, I'm really good still. Everyone forgot about me. And Osimhen is just the complete striker, the real deal, as Nico says. Another Nico says, did Man City get worse in this window? I think this is an interesting one, boys.
I mean, technically, yeah.
That's it.
Rico Lewis has now got a hell of a job on his hands, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's been playing
hell of a player, but yeah.
He is, but he's been playing that without pressure because he was it must have been almost a surprise to be staying in the team. Now he hasn't really got any competition to stay in the team. I'll be honest, I thought they might do something like go for, I don't know, Robinson at Fulham or something. Like I thought they're not going to let this go, are they? Like surely they'll get someone, even if they just spend 15 million here. Surely they'll do something. We know that he's got a lot of faith in Rico Lewis, but this really is a big show of faith. But yeah, they're definitely weaker, and you wonder where this is all heading. I don't know. I don't know, because it feels like there's going to be more exits in the summer. There's already talk about Bernardo Silva today. There's talk about Ilkay Gundogan, what's going to happen with him. Before Riyad Mahrez hit top form, I think they were considering selling him. I'm not sure if they can afford to do that at the moment because he's their best player apart from Haaland. Jack Grealish, can't really sell him because can't see anyone paying 100 million for him. But what do you with that situation? If they don't win the league this season, you do wonder how Pep starts to reframe that team.
It's been a bit weird, hasn't it? I mean, they sold off players in the summer. They shrunk their squad in the summer, didn't they? They sold two really important players currently on a title charge with Arsenal. And we were questioning why City had left themselves with such a small squad. Remember? We all said it. Like, we all put them to win the title, but we all said, but, don't really know what they're doing. Don't really understand why they're slimming themselves down this far and taking these risks. And now in the January transfer window, they've lost their best fullback. I know they weren't seeing eye to eye, but they've lost one of the world's best fullbacks.
Well, I just think more than that, their left back position is a problem position now, because you have Rico Lewis who can play there, but he's a right back. And I appreciate that Pep uses fullbacks differently to how most people do, but it's still something. And Nathan Ake, who is a centre back, can also play there. They don't have an out and out left back anymore, apart from Sergio Gomez, who hasn't appeared to have played very much. And
He's
doesn't
injured.
seem to be in the first team plans very much. I just think that there's something there where you're looking at the City team and going, look, I don't think if Cancelo had been injured for the rest of the season, I wouldn't have sat here and gone, City can't now win the league or the Champions League. So I'm not going to say it when he's left the club on a transfer. But I think it does make them significantly weaker. And when you're looking at that, I think as an Arsenal fan, that must be music to your ears, right? Like that's exactly what you want to hear of your nearest challengers in the window where you are unexpectedly top of the table.
Yeah.
Well, look, Pep's just done 2 winners in a row, and in each one he's sold off or got rid of his inverted fullbacks. Maybe he's just done with inverted left backs. He wants a centre back. It
would explain the Anthony Robinson links if he's going back to the model where he wanted fullbacks flying down and whipping crosses in low.
Yeah.
But
well,
maybe
something more traditional, you know. Maybe it's that. Maybe he's finished with inverteds. He's done. Everyone's copying him. He needs to do something else.
Okay. All right. Should we talk about Spain briefly? Because we've got a couple of questions. And the first one is from Abdul Rahman, who says, can you please tell me why Real Madrid refused to sign any fullbacks? Ancelotti Dean has said that Real Madrid's window is done. There are going to be no outgoings or incomings at Real Madrid now. I think what's interesting about this is where it leaves them after the Ferland Mendy injury. And we can talk about that in a second, but it's been confirmed that the Fran Garcia buyback at Rayo Vallecano is not going to be activated to the summer. Are they just confident with the squad they have? Is that where this is left us?
Sorry, I just seen that Newcastle are about to get a red card in this game. Yeah, I guess so. It's a strange one, and I know I saw there a lot of panic among Real Madrid's support today when that injury was announced, because they're like, where does this leave us? What can we do? And they're not really going into the market for it, like you say. I don't really see any solutions, but I do think it's interesting. I can't remember who it was exactly that wrote that they were interested in Reece James not that long ago.
I remember that.
And I think, do you remember? And I'm like, oh, he has been red carded here. The game on in the Newcastle game. But yeah, so and I find that really interesting, because I can actually see something like happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen imminently. I'm sure Reece James doesn't want to be leaving Chelsea right now. But I think probably in the summer. I mean, don't forget they've just had all this work done on their stadium. They've had this last year. They were all supposed to be involved in the Haaland stuff. Then there was all the Mbappe stuff. So like those have been like the ultimate focus. And rightly, I mean, that's how Real Madrid are typically built, isn't it? To focus on attacking, exciting Galacticos. And as a result of all this, the fullbacks are kind of left to their own devices until there's an absolute glaring error, glaring flaw that they can't ignore any longer. And that's probably where we're at right now. It probably can't be ignored any longer.
Camavinga at left back rest of the season. Talk to me, Sam.
No, not for me. No, thank you. No, thank you. We don't want to see it, do we? He's put in some good performances. He's put in some bad performances. He's the Gennaro Gattuso clip that I can't repeat due to it being a swear word ridden.
We'll lose our moment, won't we? He'll be gone.
Yeah, it'll be gone. But basically, he is that because he's not a left back. It's just how it is. I mean, Real Madrid they still continue to invest in certain things in certain areas. Like it's hard to say that they haven't spent on their squad when they just signed Tchouaméni for like 100 million euros, but they've also ignored the right back, the decay at right back for a long time. They've cheaped out a little bit, I guess, in terms of they've gone out and signed Rudiger and Alaba on free transfers. The wages are high, of course, but they're keeping some costs down where possible, and it tallies in with COVID. It tallies in with the stadium rebuild that they did during that period. Eventually, they're going to have to sort it out, but they must feel like they can get to the end of the season by just square pegging round holes. That's kind of how it is.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this from Drew. He said, Carlo is that cool uncle who gets his hand burnt, but he has to act cool, otherwise his whole image will go bad. So he can't whine like other managers. I prepped the whole thing on Fran Garcia to replace Ferland Mendy when that news broke this morning. And then it was confirmed that they were like, no, we're not doing that till the summer. And I was like, damn, I can't use that now. But for what it's worth, I really do like Fran Garcia. And I think he's a very, very good footballer. And I think he's going to be a success at Real Madrid when he eventually does go. Let's flip to the other side of El Clasico briefly, because Rodar says, any news around Barcelona? Sam, we talked briefly about the fact that Julian Araujo looked like he might be on his way. He still looks like he might be on his way. Real Madrid not signing fullbacks. Barcelona might be.
Maybe. This is what's Fabrizio last tweeted about this. So it might be on about two hours ago. Closing in on Araujo deal with LA Galaxy, waiting for MLS to approve the deal. There's the wrinkle that you get with America. MLS have got to approve it, right? All contracted with MLS. We had a really good piece from chief writer Owen Murray on our website, which came in a couple of weeks ago, and it was 3 players who are ready for the jump to Europe. One of the players that he picked was Julian Araujo. He said, I don't think he went Barcelona when he went for his suggested clubs. I don't think Barca were quite in there, but a ball dominant side, someone that can get an attacking fullback or wing back into play. He said, this guy's ready. He's ready to go. And Barcelona read that article and have and wholeheartedly agree with Owen because they look like they're trying to get
reading the website.
I mean, look, with Barca, and at this stage particularly as well, we know that they're working under serious constraints. Anything that they do, I mean, I have been chuckling away today. I got to be honest, because they've been trying to basically chip away at Fiorentina for Sofian Amrabat, and they're like, "Can we have him on loan?" I'm like, no, we need him. All right, loan with an option.
So they absolutely can't be having him. That's my big takeaway.
But like loan with an option, no, because you won't pay for him at the end of the loan. You'll just borrow him for a while, and then you won't pay for him because you haven't got any money. Okay, fine. Well, we can't do a loan with obligation because FFP won't allow Barcelona to do that. They can't commit 40 million euros to Sofian Amrabat. Like, the budget won't allow them to do it. And they've been working this angle and trying to find a way through the whole day. They've been juggling the fact that Hector Bellerin is going to Sporting to replace Pedro Porro. If they can get this Araujo deal done, fair play to him. They've pulled something out of nothing, and they often do it.
Yeah, I quite like it.
Lads, I've got a few little things just coming in, which we should probably quickly discuss as we're getting 10 to 10. A couple of bits. Everton have tried to sign someone.
Yeah, Ismail Assar.
Ismail Assar. This is the problem, right? So I was speaking to someone actually while I was away about Everton, and they've been trying to do loan deals, but even with loan deals, they can't put up enough loan fee at the moment to actually get these players. So if Sarr, they've looked at an initial loan and then 30 million in the summer. Not good enough. They're not going to get Ismail Assar right now. So keep trying, Everton. Keep trying.
Good idea.
I don't think this is their day. Yeah, it's a good idea. I don't think this is their day. I think this is a bad day at the office there. I was also told of a player that they tried to sign, looked like they had a breakthrough, and then they found out he probably wouldn't get a work permit, so they abandoned that one as well. So, yeah, not going too well over there. I thought I had a message coming in about Chelsea, but it wasn't. So that isn't not interesting.
That's
news. It's not news.
That was just you. Someone be like, "Do you want a cup of tea?"
It was Deliveroo, yeah. It's like your pizza will be there soon.
I've just seen a transfer confirmed that I do not like.
What is it?
It's Felipe to Nottingham Forest.
Right. So I was just about to bring this up because it feels like Felipe is what? That's got to be. We've got to be close to 30.
Well, Keylor Navas is still coming too.
They have 3 starting 11s.
Be good training. They just have matches. They just have games against each other.
It's
Keylor Navas is still being worked on.
This surely can't go. So Navas is still being worked on. I'm not sure if Felipe is what I'd be looking at. He's been relatively underwhelming, to be perfectly honest with you. I think at Nottingham
Has he? Because I
Forest.
thought that wouldn't have been a bad signing. I haven't seen much this season,
Sorry,
but I thought
at
actually that
Atleti,
sounded
yeah.
like. I thought that actually sounded quite decent.
He's not. He used to be good. He did. He was good. Porto Felipe, couple of Champions League nights in particular, I remember some really strong performances. Early doors, I think at Atletico, he may have had some good showings, but like for the last year and a half, he's been riddled with mistakes. Like, not good stuff.
He's only 33, so there's time to improve that.
Yeah.
The centre back
that
for
is
Forest,
true, yeah.
revolving door. Remember when they loaned in Loic Bade and they've just sent him back and now he's gone to Sevilla? And
yeah,
they
well, I
signed
mean,
Willy-
actually,
Willy
that's
Bolly
timely
and-
because Avril says Sevilla are going down, and I completely
That's your other
agree.
burner.
I've got loads of burners going on here. Yeah, up the Betis. But yeah, and I completely agree. Like, I have no idea, but I can't see this key to survival for Forest being to just keep rotating the door. Like, surely that surely doesn't move the needle. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I've got another one though, because I've just seen they're starting to roll in now. David Ornstein confirmed that PSG have reached an agreement with Chelsea to sign Hakim Ziyech on loan.
Oh, right.
Until
That's
the
interesting.
summer.
They-
Now, we had a load of questions about PSG at the start, so this takes us right nicely round into full circle. Why?
Oh, wow. Ziyech will be doing absolute cartwheels about this. So he started off
He just
the
got
month.
into the team at Chelsea.
Yeah. He started off thinking he might go at AC Milan. That link's been going for 6 months. Then across the course of this month, he's been linked with Newcastle, Everton, West Ham, and suddenly PSG are on the table. So he's gone from playing for Sean Dyche, potentially, to now playing with Messi and Mbappe. He's done all right out of this.
And Hakimi, most notably.
And Hakimi, which most notably will affect him the most. Yeah. Yeah, his mate. So honestly, he's going to be so happy about this. And actually, I'm happy for him that he's getting what he wants, because this really didn't sound likely earlier. It really hit the bumpers, this deal. And people at Chelsea was like, it just doesn't seem like it's going to get any further. Like, I don't know what the exact holdup was, something over the terms, but they were like, it's just not going to happen. So that's really interesting. Ziyech will thrive there.
Usually when these deals get held up, obviously each deal is different, but I reckon a good 65-70% of it is like who pays how much wages is probably where it all starts to break down, isn't it? I mean, that's been the talk about Keylor Navas to Forest all day. How much can Forest contribute to his weekly wage packet, which is obviously ridiculously high because he's a 4-time Champions League winner. And he plays for PSG. Ziyech probably the same thing. The clubs just start squabbling, don't they? They're just trying to protect their own weekly wage bill. But well done to Ziyech. That's good. I'm glad to see him go. Should have gone in the summer. It is weird that he's just got into the Chelsea team though, and he's actually been playing really well.
Yeah, but he'll be back out of it soon, won't he? He'll be back out of it.
Because everyone's
coming back to fitness. They've just signed Mudryk. They've just signed João Felix. Raheem Sterling's coming back soon. They've got everyone coming back to fitness in the next month. He's not going to be playing, so that's the thing. Danesh says, does he ever start a game at PSG? Well, he will, won't he?
Yeah, I thought that was a fair question, but equally, he probably moves into this rotation. I mean, look, Neymar is going to take his his yearly break when it gets to March, because that's what he does. So Ziyech should go play then, can't he? It's just play when Neymar goes on his month-long holiday in March.
Maybe that was what the holdup was. They only want to pay Ziyech's wages in March when they actually play.
Yeah, I mean, this is good from Chelsea though. Like, and Jamari puts it here. Chelsea have too many wide forwards. They need to get someone out. Like, it did feel like that, didn't it? Like, you can't have this many players in the books for 2 positions, even if there is a bit of an injury crisis at the moment, because eventually people are going to get very, very upset about it.
Yeah, 100%. It's starting to feel a bit Nottingham Forest, isn't it, at that point? So, yeah, you can't keep that room happy. You can't keep all those players motivated. And Ziyech, I've never dealt with him, but he's a pretty strong history of people saying that he's a bit of a sulker at times. So if that is a busy room and, he's struggling with the fact that he's not playing, get him out. Make sure he's off the bill. Make sure he's out of the dressing room. Todd Boehly's whole thing is that he's been basically revolutionizing the squad, turning it over, looking forward, getting younger. They've done that very strongly in the wing department? Like no other position do they feel more revolutionized? Like you might as well just let him go. I just found it funny because like for the first time in a year, quite recently, I've been watching Chelsea and thinking, oh, Ziyech is playing well for the first time in a whole year.
Bit of breaking news, lads. It's finally happening.
Hey!
Romano's just giving it the here we go. Enzo Fernandez is joining Chelsea.
I thought you were talking about Matt Doherty joining Atleti because I've just seen that one go as well, and that is the big deal for tonight. I don't want you to forget it. The Irish.
So I'm pleased. I'm pleased because I just did a load of quotes on this for Give Me Sport about Enzo Fernandez getting close and now celebrating that moment potentially. So yeah, he says boarding set to be completed. London Turkish Airlines. Okay.
Yeah, he's tagged an airline.
he likes doing this now. He's suddenly doing like sponsored tweets for
mate. The geezer's loaded.
You know what? I respect it. Get your bag and get out. Like that is completely.
He'll be retired in 2 years. We'll never see him again. Yeah, I mean, this is It's been edging closer as we suspected, and I'm glad that we're able to end the show with this moment because it's where we started. It's exactly.
What do you mean end the show? I've got 6 pages on Sasha Lukic to go.
Oh, yeah, sorry, mate.
No, we're done in 4 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, we talked obviously on the podcast a few weeks back about how this deal was a complete rip-off, basically. You don't pay this much money for somebody in this position. And yeah, I think we're probably all sat here now thinking it's fine. Why? Is that because we've had time to come to terms with it? Is it because Chelsea is so poor in that area? Or is it still not okay?
It's not fine. But you're so jaded, you're just happy to see it done. That's it.
I don't know, man. I stand by what I said right at the top. That I think that we're paying at this point for you're paying the premium of what Enzo could become, right? You are paying that level of if Enzo gets to the level that we think he can and that he's currently displaying a trajectory to get to, this deal might seem like a good deal in 5 years' time. If he holds down the base of Chelsea's midfield for 5 years, does this make this a worthwhile transfer fee? I think the answer is yes. I mean, I can't wait for them to sign him, as we've made the joke, to that 2043, so that they can amortize this over 20 years. But it does make it feel that it's just like one of those where you're looking at it and going, is this going to pay out? I think there's a very high chance that this actually looks like a very good deal in 5 years because I think Enzo is that good. I'm just wary that Chelsea are a chew him up and spit him out club. And if it doesn't start well, then that can lead to problems. And so that's where I'm at. I appreciate this loads of money, right? And I think those things are, but I don't have major problems with spending on top stuff because that's where we're at. Like where I'm sitting on it and where I'm thinking none of this should ever work and none of these top level transfers are ever going to work because players are given unexpected price tags. It's not realistic. We have this. This is where we are. And until someone steps in and changes the transfer market for good, it's where it's going to stay because people have this money to spend right now.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're right. Basically, anybody that's even remotely good at what he's good at in midfield is an absolute minimum 60 million euros. Like that's like the absolute start. Don't even have to be that good. In fact, you can have roughly 26 Premier League starts to your name, and you can be a 70 million pound holding midfielder in the form of Moises Caicedo. So, young player of the World Cup, winner of the World Cup. Brilliant performances in the Champions League against PSG and Juventus. Tack it on. He's a brilliant player. He's 2 skill sets in one. He might even be 3 skill sets in one. He's really special. But this is a British record transfer. And it's 6 months after he moved for 10, 15 million euros 100%. Or something like that. So it's a lot, man.
It's a lot of pressure on young shoulders, but Enzo's been chucked into some pretty demanding environments already, right? He's been chucked into the middle of a World Cup when things weren't going great for anyone, basically, at Argentina. And suddenly he comes in and he makes a difference. He's been chucked into the deep end at Benfica when you look at that Champions League group and has excelled throughout it. He's been chucked in to a side who haven't won the Primera in a while, who have watched their rivals steam ahead of them, and he has controlled games from the middle. Now, Chelsea need to protect him, and he needs bodies around him, and they need to bring in someone else, which is the weird part of this. That's the bit which I actually think is the scariest part of it. Chelsea need to bring in someone alongside him if this is going to work. But generally, I just think you're looking at it and going, that's an exceptionally good player who could anchor your midfield for up to 10 years. He won't, but he could. and that's where I'm at. So that's it. Andrew just said, who'd you bring on alongside him? I think the answer might be
Kante.
Florentino Luis, but that's a conversation for another day. I don't think Rui Costa ever wants to see anyone from Chelsea ever again, I'd imagine.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I feel like they've bought a few players from Benfica. Did they get David Luiz straight from Benfica? Is that? I think that and Matic came. I know he was at Chelsea before, but he also came from Benfica.
Came back, yeah.
It's a relatively well trodden path here. The other two were pretty damn good for Chelsea. So, yeah, I mean, no one here is sat here denying that Enzo Fernandez is an amazing player. But yeah, this is I'm just as against this deal as I was 3 weeks ago. That's how I'd put it.
After we finished here, if you haven't watched our video on Enzo Fernandez, which we thought we put out the first time we thought he was signing, it's on the channel. So go and have a look at that
right
video.
now. We need to put that out again.
Yeah, we'll give that a share. We'll give that a share. But
Jack, do you think he'll play against Fulham then on Friday?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. I think he goes straight in. I don't think you sign someone for 120 million and then leave them on the bench.
So they're going to have Mudryk. Oh, Newcastle are into the final. They're going to have Mudryk and Enzo Fernandez. But it doesn't matter. We'll still beat them.
Okay. I mean, people are
no time to gel. There you go.
No time to gel. Polina's going to really hurt him first game, isn't he? Sasha Lukic is going to come in on his debut and snap someone, get a red card straight away. That's going to be the big breaker at Chelsea. So we shall see. So yeah, good. Right. I think on that note, lads, I think it's probably time for us to call it a day. There is an hour left on the deadline day, but it feels like we've discussed pretty much all the big stories. So we are going to leave it there. All that's left for me to do is to say thank you very much, first and foremost, to Alex Barker at Euro Expert, who joined us earlier. It was brilliant to have him on the channel, and we'll hopefully have him back on Ranks FC very soon. Thank you so much to our transfer guru, Mr. Dean Jones, for bringing us all the latest here on deadline day.
Yes, no worries. Thank you, lads. Good show.
You've forgotten how to speak. That's how tired.
I don't have anything else to say. I was just reading. Have you got anything on Mateta? No.
It's Everton. Go to bed.
Let's not check out any more Everton rumours. I'm done with these. Let's just say they failed.
Oh dear. Thank you very much, Sam Tyler, Rank God. It's been a real pleasure, mate.
Nice one, mate. Loved it. 2 hours talking transfers. Doesn't get any better than that.
No, it doesn't. Enjoy the rest of deadline day, everybody. I've been Jack Hollins. This has been Ranks FC. It's been a real pleasure sharing this stream with you all. Thank you all for your questions, for tuning in, for jumping in the chat, for having a great time with all of us. It's been lots of fun, and we will see you very shortly. The pod will be out tomorrow. We're going to record in the morning, talking about all the best of deadline day, so you can look back at it then. But until then, take it easy. Peace.